Hey everyone, Andrea here. Welcome to Karchermakes. This is the place where I like to talk about all things crafty. Let's get into it. So first up is my latest finished object. It's also what I'm wearing. This is the Grid Gambit Cowl designed by Samantha Guerin. And what this is, it's a bandana style cowl, so it's knit on the bias and it makes like a triangle shape that you then seam up the back. And I'll insert some better footage here of what it looks on the blocking mat so that you can see the general kind of shape of it before it gets sewed together. And also I'll insert some footage of kind of what it looks like on. This isn't the best view of it, so I'll insert that as I'm kind of going through it. But this is a really great example of a project where the yarn choices and the pattern design, chef's kiss. Perfection together. And you know, there's a lot of times where I'll make a project and the yarn is kind of competing with the design or vice versa, but this ain't that, y'all. This is beautiful together. So the yarn choices that I used, the main color is this kind of creamy, almost blush color. It is Magpie fibers, solo fingering, and the Stag Bunny colorway. And then the contrast color is one skein of my Handspun. It's a 3-ply chain plied Handspun, which allowed for these very long color repeats. And the result is this kind of gradient effect, as you can see here in the shawl. And I love it. I think it is stunning, and I could not ask for a better result here. So as far as making this, I knit this completely to the pattern with one small modification. So it uses US 7 size needles, 4.5 millimeters, and the only modification that I made was how this is seamed together. And I can take this off and show this a little better. So the directions actually have you seam it completely up the back, and you can kind of see it better this way. But what I chose to do is I only seamed it halfway because I found that in my shift cowl that I recently finished, similar bandana style design, I seamed it completely up the back as per the instructions, and it just kind of lays a little weird, like with my shoulder, how I like to wear it on the diagonal. So I don't remember who I saw do it, and I apologize if it was you and you're watching this. Tell me below that it was you and I can give credit, but they just seamed it halfway, just enough so that it kind of fits around your neck, and then it has this like open kind of section here. And what that does, as I put it back on, what that does is it allows it to just maybe lay a little flatter, and it's almost like a gusset. If you want to think about like how a sock gusset works, it just gives that little bit of extra give so that it kind of fits down over the shoulders, which is how I prefer to wear this. Now, you don't have to wear it that way. You could absolutely seam it all the way up the back and it's fine, I'm sure, but that was just my personal choice, and I think it was a good one. Also, kind of just comparing this to that shift cowl, it's a very similar kind of basic architecture, but I mentioned when I made that one that the final I-cord bind off, it was supposed to be 2 colors, and well, I was being stubborn and I couldn't be bothered, but I did do the 2 color bind off here, and I think it's really pretty, and I'm glad that I took the extra time to do that. So as far as the pattern goes, it's a really well written pattern, $8 on Ravelry. And what I liked about the pattern the most is that Samantha gives both written instructions and charted instructions. So if you're somebody who prefers to knit from charts, you have that option. You're somebody who prefers to knit from like the written longhand form words, you can do that too. And I know not a lot of patterns have that, and I found that to be helpful, at least for me. Now, I did choose to follow the written pattern as I went along, but I was also able to use those charts to just kind of get a sense of what was coming next as I progressed through the sections of the pattern. Another helpful feature of this pattern is that Samantha includes stitch counts for the main color rows when you complete them. So without giving too much away, you do 2 rows of the main color, 2 rows of the contrast color, and it's like a pattern repeat, but on the main color rows, she gives you a stitch count every time. And for somebody like me who gets very easily distracted, it really helped me stay on track. And between that piece, as well as the fact that this is a very intuitive pattern, and I mean, you can just see, right, by the way it looks, you're kind of making, as the name suggests, this grid, right? And it's real obvious when you come up to a section and you're supposed to be slipping, and if you don't have the correct count and you're not slipping when you should, it's very obvious that you made a mistake before you get too far in the pattern. So I found that to be helpful as well. I think what's really appealing about this as a finished object, it's very wearable, and this sort of graphic high contrast, at least in the colors that I chose, it's just very stunning. It stands out, and I've seen a lot of other people do this in maybe colors that weren't as contrasty, and it was still really beautiful. When I was knitting this up, obviously before blocking, I was like, I don't know, this is gonna be like a little stiff, but once I blocked it, the drape really improved, and the stitches kind of laid just perfectly, and it's beautiful. I love it. It's very warm. So when I talked about this as a potential project that I was going to work on, or that I was going to start it, let's be honest, there was no question in my mind once I decided I was going to make it. So I talked about possibly adding buttons to the seam instead of sewing it together. And quite honestly, I couldn't figure out how to make that happen without having the finished object already done. And I would have wanted to incorporate buttonholes into the knitting. And before seeing it completed, I just couldn't figure that out. However, if I make this again, which is always a possibility. No, it's not always a possibility. There's some things that I make once and I will never make again. Exhibit A, the Stephen West shawl. Never gonna make that again. Glad I did it. I love it. Never gonna happen again. But this, I could absolutely see myself making this again. And what I think I would do, and I'm gonna take it off again, sorry. What I think I would do the next time is to figure out how to incorporate buttons and buttonholes in these 2 sections. And like I mentioned, as you're kind of knitting the pattern, it's hard to visualize, especially because this is knit on the bias, where those buttonholes would need to go. But now that I have this as like a reference, I feel like I could maybe figure out how to get those incorporated here, and then to just add some really pretty buttons. And, you know, I think that might be an option. We will see. Okay, putting it back on because it is very chilly in this room. It is like 30 degrees out today, and I had to go out this morning for an appointment. I did wear this, and it kept me very warm. And I probably should have canceled the appointment because I had to drive in the snow and ice coming home. There was an accident right in front of me. A guy ran off into a guardrail, into trees. Like, I probably should have just stayed home, but made it home safe. That's all that matters. So tell me what you think. How do you feel about this Grid Gambit Cowl? Will you be making one? If so, share in the comments below what your yarn choices are going to be, because I really am thinking that I want to make another one. And please inspire me with your color choices. So as far as leftovers for this project, this is my main color. And again, this is Magpie Fiber Solo Fingering. I held this double as the main color. Now, you can see there's not that much left over. This is maybe, it's less than 10 grams for sure, possibly even just 5. So I split the skein in half and so that I could hold it double. And when I got to probably the next to the last repeat of the main color, I ran out of the one little ball, so I had to end up pulling from the center of this one, which worked fine. I should have just did that from the beginning with one cake, but I know a lot of people, not a lot of people, some people were saying they were possibly running out of their main color, and because this yarn is actually 115 grams a skein, I think that kind of saved me from running out. But if so, if you're running short, the way this is designed, like, you could certainly end it early. There's nothing saying that you can't end it early. Your section here where you seam it together may be a little short on the one side, but if you're like me and you just seam it halfway anyway, you're not gonna tell. So just kind of be mindful of that if you do decide to make this project. Make sure you have maybe a backup skein of your main color just in case you run low. And then for my Handspun, I have quite a bit of this left, although like I mentioned, this was a 5-ounce loop bump, but there's like 44 grams of this left, which is quite a bit. So there's going to be some fantastic Handspun Scrappy projects in my future for sure. Okay, next up we can talk about whips. So this is the whip that y'all saw last week if you were here. If not, feel free to go watch that video. So these were my Christmas Eve cast on socks. These are the Red Robin socks by Helen Stewart, a Curious Handmade. And I was right about here where the stitch marker is. I was right about there the last time you saw these. Sock 1's already done. This is sock 2. I got my shadow wrap heel in, and now I'm just kind of progressing with the foot. So my goal is to have these done by Wednesday. No particular reason why it has to be Wednesday per se. I just don't want these to linger. I want to get them finished, and by giving myself a goal to work towards, like a day to say, hey, I want this done by this day, it's helpful for me. And then of course, I mentioned making this Valentine's bag back here. I mentioned making this in the last video, and I needed some Valentine socks to go with it, so I cast those on. So this yarn, which is a kind of self-striping, this yarn is Opal Floor Ply in the Sweet Kiss colorway. And there's like a little picture of how it looks. And I feel like the pictures with Opal and Regia, I feel like the pictures never do the sock justice. And I just worked on this last night for a little bit. I cast it on, got the cuff done, and then just did a little bit. But look how nice that is. I love it. I love these colors together. I love that they're not obviously like pink, red, Valentine's-y type colors, but I love it. And I really enjoy Opal, and then I put Regia in kind of the same category as Opal, this sort of commercial yarn that has a more toothier, rustic feel. These are my best wearing socks. Opal and Regia are my best wearing socks for sure. So there's that. This is just a vanilla sock for me. I follow my own sort of recipe, which is not special. It's 64 stitches, US 1 needles, which is 2.25 millimeters. I do 2x2 rib until I'm tired of it. This happened to be 12 rows, and they are on their way to greatness. I have no self-imposed deadline for these. This is just something I was like, oh, it's Valentine's Day. Let me make something to go in that bag. So there's that. So that's it for project talk. And in kind of life stuff / other yarny adjacent things, thank you to everyone on your comments about me hoping to get into the Maryland sheep and wool spinning class that I wanted to, and last Sunday was very stressful for me. I was very anxious, but despite the fact that the website was very slow, I was able to get into the Yarnitecture class with Jillian Moreno. I cannot wait. I am just hoping and manifesting that nothing goes awry this time. I've been trying to take this class for 5 years, and now that I'm finally in it again, like, it has to happen. I want it to happen. So very excited about that. Now, all that to say, my spinning wheels, both, I have 2, they both have projects on them. So I'm gonna have to get to spinning, and maybe I'll do that this weekend. I really need to get to spinning and clean off my bobbins, because we need to bring the wheel and then I think it said 4 empty bobbins to class. So that'll be just the motivation that I need to finish my handspun projects, and then maybe one of those handspun yarns becomes another Grid Gambit Cowl. We will see. So that is all I have for you this week. This was a little quicker than usual, but make sure that you like this video, subscribe if you enjoyed it and would like to see more. And until next week, happy making.